As a United States citizen who currently resides in the state of North Carolina, I wanted to address, on behalf of every citizen of this country, the words that were spoken to us by Governor Gavin Newsom in response to Donald Trump's position on illegal immigration. I'm going to play the video of the address given to the American population by Governor Gavin Newsom in its entirety. And after the video concludes, I am going to utilize my knowledge of law and politics to counter certain aspects of the address given to us by Governor Gavin Newsom. You all, take a listen to this particular address.
I want to say a few words about the events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken. Families separated. Friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces. Not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities, they're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases quite literally are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him. I want to say a few words.
Okay. Now, you all heard what Governor Gavin Newsom said when he addressed the entire population who resides here in the United States of America. Now, when I first listened to this particular address, unlike many people, I was able to pinpoint certain hypocritical statements made to us by Governor Gavin Newsom. And one of the things that he said in concluding his address to us was that this is not a president's government or a governor's government. This is a government specifically for the people, the citizens of every state that makes up this nation. That is an actual true statement, because we live in a democratic society under a Republican form of government. And that essentially means that the government here in America is a government that's instituted by the people, for the people, and of the people. The term people, as defined in the Bill of Rights, to include the Constitution, makes it's a makeup of us civilians, each one of us individually. So yes, that portion of what Gavin Newsom said is actually true. However, the problem that I have with the statement that he made is the fact that Governor Gavin Newsom, based upon his own actions and behavior, does not truly believe in what he said to us. Now, if you think about it, Governor Gavin Newsom is so upset at Donald Trump right now as a result of Donald Trump, in Gavin Newsom's words, usurping his authority under the Constitution. Usurping his authority under the Constitution because Donald Trump has infringed upon specific freedoms granted to us, the people, under not only the Constitution, but also the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But from what we know, based upon what Gavin Newsom has done to the residents of California, specifically with regards to encroaching upon the people's right in California to keep and bear arms. Now, for those of us who are unfamiliar with the liberty to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights, that is a right that is respectively reserved to every individual civilian who resides in this country, who is a citizen of the United States of America. And that specific amendment specifically says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So if we're talking about applying what Gavin Newsom feels Donald Trump should have applied to the First Amendment, then I'm simply saying that Gavin Newsom should have applied what he felt Donald Trump should have applied to the First Amendment to the Second Amendment. You see, when Governor Gavin Newsom has enforced an unconstitutional statutory provision ratified by the legislators of California to restrict those in California from having certain firearms, certain ammunition, and high-capacity magazines that could be utilized for their personal protection, was in violation of the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights. Now, I don't give a crap what Gavin Newsom says. I don't care that he feels that he was right in what he did when he encroached upon the residents of California's right to keep and bear arms. But who the heck is he to critique Donald Trump when Donald Trump essentially has done the same thing to people that Gavin Newsom has done with regards to violating specific freedoms guaranteed to we the people under the Bill of Rights. Now, Gavin Newsom claims that if any civilian violates the law as a result of being attacked by those in civil service, that they will be penalized, they will be taken to jail, they will be in prison, prosecuted. Well, my words to Mr. Gavin Newsom would be, under those circumstances, why the heck did he not subject federal agents and military personnel to the same arrest for violating the law that he claimed they violated when they came into California under the instructions of President Donald Trump? Why didn't Gavin Newsom send law enforcement personnel in the state of California to the scene to arrest those employed within the national government of the United States of America? See, that is something that you all need to ask yourselves. Now, surely, if I wasn't as educated in law and politics as I am, the statement that Gavin Newsom gave to us all, it would have resonated with me to the point to where I would have overlooked the simple hypocrisies that he mentioned in his address to the public. You know, we have a right to equal protection of the law. So if Gavin Newsom says that civilians who violate the law needs to be arrested and will be arrested, then under equal protection of the law, does that not mean that those employed within the national government or a military institution who violates the law, according to Gavin Newsom, should be arrested also? So if one specific group would be arrested, then under equal protection of the law, the other group should also be arrested. If one group is not going to be arrested, then under equal protection of the law, nobody should be arrested. Now, moving forward, I mentioned this many times, and I will reiterate it here again. For those of you who are unaware of what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is, let me explain it to you all once again. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is made up of 30 articles. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was instituted in conformity with the ratification of the United Nations Charter. So, with that being said, it is evident, specifically in the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is, in essence, a national and international legal document. And under Article 13, paragraphs 1 and 2, it specifically states that every man, woman, and child who resides in any country has the right to leave that country and go into another country. And once they get into that specific country, they have a right to move from border to border, state to state, city to city, town to town. And in the process of doing so, they have a right to take up residency there. So with that being said, it is clear under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that there is no such thing as illegal immigration. And yes, of course, those in civil service whom we have employed within the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of our national government or a centralized government of a state have made laws, statutory provisions to be exact, that are in conflict with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution for the United States of America, to include other documents associated with our human, civil, and constitutional rights. That means that those of us who are invoking the freedoms that we have that were established under the supreme law of the land are in conformity with the law, which makes us law-abiding citizens. And those in civil service, such as Gavin Newsom, who has encroached upon the very freedoms that we have that are supported and protected by the supreme law of the land, are the actual criminals here. So why the heck should we law-abiding citizens listen to criminal-minded individuals, whether those individuals are currently in civil service or they are currently other civilians? Clearly, Gavin Newsom is only saying what the heck he feels he needs to say that will resonate with us to the point to where he, with his propaganda, can manipulate us into electing or appointing him to a specific position of public trust in which he seeks at some point in the foreseeable future. But sadly, so many people have not yet realized how those in politics actually work. And I'm willing to bet that Gavin Newsom might be shaking hands with Donald Trump outside of the public view. I'm just saying, because that is what history dictates to me. They tell us one thing, but they do something totally opposite behind our backs. And then when we are manipulated into voting for them, we then find out that they are no better than the person that they criticize before they took that specific position of public trust. Now, the fact of the matter is, let me tell y'all something. The Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights was designed to ensure that we civilians were in a position to combat those in civil service, whether those individuals are employed as law enforcement personnel or military personnel, when they stepped outside the bounds of their privileged authority that we have given them under the Constitution for the United States of America. But how the heck could we as civilians, specifically those in California, do that when they have been misled into believing that they had to conform with some unconstitutional statutory provision enforced by this incompetent bozo, Gavin Newsom? Now, if people had the appropriate arms to protect themselves with, then perhaps law enforcement and military personnel would not have done what it is that they've done under the direction of Donald Trump. Perhaps Donald Trump, knowing that the American people had enough knowledge of the rights that we have, the rights that our ancestors had established for us, to combat them effectively, perhaps Donald Trump would not have even sent law enforcement and military personnel to California to do what it is that Gavin Newsom disagrees with them doing. But here's the thing, though. That's like the pot calling the kettle black, right? And I tell this to people many times, especially when I used to teach legal research within the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But here's the thing. We all have the same rights, people. And sometimes people allow their emotions to cloud their better judgment in order to get back at certain members of our communities. So yeah, they agree with certain unconstitutional statutory provisions being ratified. But what those individuals do not understand, and they fail to understand at the time that they allow their emotions to get the better of them, is that when those specific laws are ratified in violation of someone else's freedoms, that the door to the freedoms that those individuals cherish so much are also open to attack. by not only civil servants, but also other civilians as well. That's why I say it's either we have rights or we don't. There can never be a gray area in spite of how we feel, in spite of what we believe as a result of how we feel. Many people believe in restricting certain people's access to firearms as a result of how they felt after the various mass shootings that have occurred here in the United States of America. And this is what we get as a result of that. We make the situation worse. And when I say we, I'm talking about the people who agrees with the act of gun control here. And yes, the right to keep and bear arms is the only right that was designed to protect every other freedom that we have. Without firearms or armament, we will not be as safe as we are here in the country that we are citizens of. That's why law enforcement personnel carry guns, military personnel carry guns. But these very people whom we have elected or appointed into positions of public trust are telling us, the civilians, the very people who put them there, that we are not able to have specific armament that is designed to ensure our safety and the safety of our family and friends. And the sad thing about it is so many of you have listened to that propaganda because you all believe that you have no out. You all believe that you have no out because you are unfamiliar with the civil rights that you have to counter this act of tyranny perpetrated against us by not only Donald Trump, but also Gavin Newsom as well. So the point that I'm making here is that we have to watch and really listen to what those in civil service tell us. We cannot miss the hypocrisy in what it is they tell us because of how we feel, because of what we think. Because that is how they deceive us, y'all. They tell us what it is they feel we want to hear. Because if it's something that we want to hear, we're not going to be focused on the things that we should be hearing. And that is how these civil servants take advantage of us every 2, 4, 6, and 8 years. Every single time there's an election cycle. And far too often, we as people in general have fell for the same propaganda over and over and over again. But here are the rights that I'm speaking about that we have, y'all. We have a right of revolution. So when Governor Gavin Newsom said that if we resist, when I say we, I'm talking about the people of California, when you all resist attacks upon your person by law enforcement and military personnel with force, that is against the law. But how the heck can those actions be against the law when the Declaration of Independence under paragraph 2 specifically says that the people have a right to overthrow the government or overthrow those employed within our governmental institutions when they become tyrannical to the point to where they neglect their duties to protect and respect our freedoms under the Constitution in which we have elected or appointed them to do so. And then you have other judicial precedents. You have the right of revolution defined in the Black's Law Dictionary that also supports that specific freedom. So I'm telling you all that to invoke your right of revolution, it is not a crime. It is an actual right protected by the supreme law of the land. And we all know that the Constitution supersedes any judicial opinion, any statutory provision, any rule, any regulation, any policy, every ordinance. The Constitution supersedes that. In spite of what those idiots in civil service will have us believe. But Gavin Newsom, he actually acknowledged that in the comment that he made which is why I say it is hypocritical, because to acknowledge the Constitution, to acknowledge the Declaration of Independence, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Bill of Rights, and say that people who invoke those freedoms are criminals is hypocrisy at its best. Because I don't understand how somebody can be in conformity with a law on one hand and be considered a criminal for obeying that law on the other. I don't understand how those who violate the law are considered law-abiding citizens on the one hand, and those who are in conformity with the law are considered criminals on the other. You see, this has gotten totally out of control. And the only way to put it back right again is for people to understand the freedoms that we have. Understand that even if we do invoke the right of revolution, let's say that somebody in a law enforcement agency or military institution are able to overpower us and take us through the judicial system, as Gavin Newsom indicated in his particular address to the American people. There's another right that we have, and that right is called jury nullification, meaning we do not have to go by any unconstitutional statutory provision ratified by some state legislator and enforced by some law enforcement officer and applied by some judge. We can disregard that. We can disregard the judge's instructions to convict. We can disregard the law. We have a right under jury nullification to do that. Because to be honest, as Gavin Newsom said, this is a government for the people, by the people, and of the people. That means that we have not only the first, but we also have the last say-so in what transpires in this country that actually affects us as a whole. If it affects us as a whole, we need to shut it down at its root. And the only way to do that, my people, is to learn about what your rights are. Stand on those freedoms, no matter what those idiots in civil service tell us.